Right, as you can probably hear, it's pouring of rain today on the roof of the studio. What I want to explore today is by using some imagery from the cinema, developing an understanding of chiaroscuro. Chiaroscuro is a term that relates to the light and dark areas in a painting, in an image. Caravaggio was probably the best exponent of this and really influenced generations of artists after he passed away. So I'm going to start with a group of people feasting at a table, and let's see where this goes today. So again, I'm going to start, you can use a charcoal to sketch out your basic structure, basic kind of positioning of the composition you're dealing with. I would always generally use a brush just to get a sense of where the subjects are, and again I will quickly put these in a kind of structural sense, creating shape and compositional balance. And in my work I like to, as you know, keep the brushwork very expressive and fluid. Let the brush and the marks dictate the composition and my next move. In that way I can keep the picture and the image alive and keep my enthusiasm, interest in the subject much longer. Again, I'm feeling my way around the composition. This is giving me a sense of understanding, both visually and also an understanding via my mark making. Because I'm not trying to create a photograph, I'm trying to create a presence with my experience of looking at this subject. If I wanted a photograph, I would take a photograph. So as you can see, I'm just creating a structure here, and the perspective is good because it's almost going back into the triangular shape. And the balance of composition is always good when you have the kind of golden section idea in mind. And as we go along, I would decide what I keep and what I'll discard in the composition. So you get the idea that we're working our way around the canvas and the composition. And when we're happy, or at least feel that we're getting a composition of some interest to us, then we can take it further. So when you're dealing with chiaroscuro, you're trying to deal with, as I said, the lights and the darks and the midtones. So it depends obviously where the light is actually coming from. And when you mix your colours, don't forget that you need to experiment with different mixtures, different percentages. So if you've got a basic flesh tone, mix up four different tonal ranges of flesh tone. So if you've got 4 areas of flesh tone on your palette, on one position where you've got a cool area you're going to add obviously the cooler tones, the blues, the greens, the purples, and in the warmer areas you're going to add obviously the warmer colours, which are the reds, yellows, oranges, moving into the yellow ochres. So and on your palette, if you've mixed up a flesh tone in 4 batches, separate it into 4 groupings, and then add and experiment with different percentages of colour, blues, purples, greens. So from that original flesh tone, you can have darker flesh tone areas, that are predominantly cool tones, and in warmer areas, as I mentioned before. And if you have 4 batches of the same flesh tone on your palette, obviously in one batch you're going to add some blue, on another batch some more yellow maybe, another batch some more green, another batch more yellow, so on and so forth. So basically you're keeping on experimenting with the tonal ranges, and as I said, the skin tone will depend on many factors. It won't be just one skin tone that you're painting over the whole figure. As you can see here, there's a man's head. I'm beginning to understand. This point he's got his hand kind of picking up some food, and then at the top you've got where the light hits the forearm and the top of the hand there. So you can see the light and dark areas. This process continues until you fully understand the subject you're dealing with. Constant mixing, remixing, re-evaluating what you've done, always questioning. And always trying to focus on the subject and let that actually instruct you of your next move. Keep on looking at the subject, that will inform you. And if you look enough and you explore enough, you'll begin to understand the subject in a tonal way, and in a mark-making way, rather than illustrational daubs. So I'm focused on this main central figure at the moment, and then if that starts to work in my favour, I'm happy with the understanding of this figure, then I'll move on to the other subjects. And of course, there's times when you want to work wet into wet, which means obviously while the paint is wet you carry on with new tonal ranges. And there's times when you want to work after it's dried, after the paint layer is dried, and you want to rework an area. As you can see, I'm working my way, gradually trying to understand the subject, and the forms of the subject I'm dealing with. And this keeps the painting alive, keeps me interested, keeps me stimulated, and keeps me trying to create something fresh with some degree of vitality and honesty. You're building, basically, building process. And if you're prepared to persevere with that building process, it begins to come together. But if you don't keep on questioning your marks, your visual understanding, of the subject, then you will lose your way. And consequently, the picture will have that laboured look. Which you don't want, or I don't want anyway. I want to be surprised by the image at the end. Not bored by it. So, as with any building process, you have to have patience and care. And you have to be ruthless enough to explore new possibilities and actually act upon them. It's no good at just exploring. You've got to question, re-question, re-evaluate. Destroy previous layers, destroy previous understandings. Which have led you into areas that are unclear and untruthful. As I said earlier, I want to be surprised by what appears. If I know at the start of the journey where my destination will be, it ceases to be an interesting journey and a challenge. Like with any journey, it's the surprises, the unknown, that keeps you interested. The new experiences, that you encounter. These encounters lead on to growth, development, better understanding, and a life full of creativity and imagination. So anyway, I'll continue exploring and working my way around the figures and the composition, trying to embrace and absorb the lights and darks, the chiaroscuro nature of the piece, and let it dry, have a break, then consider tomorrow how it looks, decide on what I need to change and how I can proceed, how I can move forward. Right, as you can see, it's developed further from when I last left you. And although the original subject was influenced by a still from the film The Cook, the Thief, the Wife and His Lover by Greenaway, as I've developed the image, I changed the composition. So I've lost figures, I've added figures, I've added a goose on the table. So I'm kind of moving it into a new direction, a new feast, maybe a Christmas feast, maybe a wedding feast, who knows. Candlesticks there, the main figure dealing with the goose at the front of the table, and the other guests looking on, waiting for their supper. So this is what I mean about inspiration. You start with one subject, one idea, one image, and as you go through the stages, the layers, you adapt, edit, change, the composition, develop the composition. That's the journey of exploration, and you're surprised every step. So I'm going to continue with this now, and hopefully the journey will give me more surprises, and the picture will inevitably change and develop as I go along. Now, as you can see, it's really developed further. I've changed some of the original composition. On the table, I've added a goose, some wine glasses, some mandarins, some pomegranates, some wine bottled, candlesticks, and I'm just gradually developing it. And whatever comes into my mind, if I think it's going to benefit from adding extra elements to the composition, then I add extra elements and I decide whether I keep them or I discard them. The point is, you must explore your creative journey. You must explore what comes into your imagination.